readers,
reviewers,
countrymen.
lend us your ears.
And a huge thank you to all of our Patreons.
Thank you to the Pit Fighters, the First Swords, and all of the Bright Stars, Truth and Courage.
Hello and welcome today. We are the brothers Gwynne. This is my brother Ed. I am Will. It's been a few weeks maybe since we've had a video up on the channel. That's because I was quite ill, and then I don't feel ill anymore, but I still just sound like I'm ill and I'm not fully recovered.
Yeah, you do sound snuffly.
And so, yeah, it's hard talking for a long time, but today
if you need to grab a blanket, cup of tea, sit in the corner, just feel
maybe you'll just or if you watch the video I did talking about my June TBR, it was my June TBR, you may see a wrapped up Ed in the bottom of the screen.
I was in full burrito mode.
You were in your burrito mode.
Snug as a bug in a rug.
Exactly. But here we are today to talk about what we read in June. I actually didn't read too much, some great quality, but not too much. But Ed, you had pretty chock-a-block reading-wise, weren't you?
It was okay. I would say it's mid.
Oh, Ed, don't hold back. You read, what was it, 7 or 8 books?
7 or 8.
Nearly double me. I read 4. So let's not show off. Let's be grateful for the time you had to read.
Yeah, true.
And let's talk about the first book we read.
Okay.
Let's do it.
First one I read, we both read, was for the channel, which was starting our read-along of Blood and Bone. It was A Time of Dread.
Oh, yeah.
By the Papa Gwynne. Now, Of Blood and Bone is a series that is much less spoken about in all areas of life when you consider Papa Gwynne's books. But for bad reason. Not for good reason. For bad reason. Because it's extremely underrated, I think, this series. Obviously, if you love The Faith and the Fallen, you will most likely love this trilogy.
Yep.
If you didn't love The Faith and the Fallen, you'll most likely love this trilogy. If you've never read Faith and the Fallen, don't read it. Don't read this trilogy, but you would still love it if you did read it.
Yes,
that's what I think anyway. But did you listen to A Time of Dread?
I did,
listened to an Audible, and yeah.
So until the beginning of this year, I hadn't listened to any of Papa Gwynne's.
You hadn't read Papa Gwynne.
Yeah, very funny. I hadn't listened to any of his books via audiobook before, and so sorry about that.
Oh,
got through The Faith and the Fallen,
begins.
and so listened to A Time of Dread for the first time. And it was great. I love his voices for his characters. Damien Lynch does a fantastic job. He just nails down how many characters there are, because a lot of people say that there are just too many characters in these books, which is impossible. I was doing it just as a joke. But yeah, he just manages to make each one of them feel fresh and vivid. So obviously I've got a bit of an advantage. I've grown up with these characters, been talked about and written about, so I know them. But for those who don't, I still think Damien Lynch does a great enough job that they will be very distinguishable. And I just love how Papa Gwynne takes the finale of The Faith and the Fallen, jumps about a century ahead, and imagines what would have happened. And it's so annoying when you see the history kind of thwarted and tainted by these lies that it makes you very angry. And that's why I think it's much richer if you have read The Faith and the Fallen.
I think you feel nostalgic for those characters, don't you? And seeing the history play out through what others have spoken, it's
painful.
It's painful. It's as if reading Caesar's Gallic Wars and you're like the Gauls and it was like 100 years ago. You know, you're seeing it from someone else's point of view, which might not be true. Most of it probably is true, but the good bits are tweaked, you know.
Very interesting how history is written by the victors. But this is part of the read long, as I'd said, for us. We're reading all of Papa Gwynne's books, so of Blood and Bone, and then going into the Bloodsworn saga. So yeah, join us over on Discord, please do. This was the June read. We got a Blood and Bone in July, so it's definitely not too late. What did I say?
Of Blood and Bone.
I'm sorry, A Time of Blood in July. So it's definitely not too late to join. And then obviously Time of Courage in August, and then we dive into the Bloodsworn saga in time for the release of The Fury of the Gods.
Yes, we do.
In October.
So what I love about A Time of Dread is, and all of the books in Of Blood and Bone, is that each of them have a very distinct tone. So Time of Dread has a very different tone to The Faith and the Fallen. I think The Faith and the Fallen feels like one long book. The tone matches each of them, obviously, but all of the core cinematic elements are very different from one another. Lots of blood, still. Lots of blood in this as well, but the focus is in very different areas, and the way that Papa Gwynne explores the history, even though that we know the history, is really interesting. I love the smattering of new characters and old. One of the characters is actually inspired by Will Durham, is inspired by Will because William is on the autistic spectrum, and
true.
so is Drem. Drem has lots of these things that you do, and lots of these personality traits. And yeah, I just love seeing the story from Drem's point of view, which is just not something that you read in fantasy at all, really.
No, it's not. And how many people
experience.
can say that you got a character in a book inspired by you? So I'm very lucky, very honoured, and Nellie's here to say hello.
Yeah, so you're
well.
you're Drem, the main character, and I'm Svik.
Yeah, but everyone loves Svik.
Yeah, everyone loves.
He tells a good story.
He does. Yeah.
Nelly, does he tell a good story? Anyway, so that is the Time of Dread, Ed. And do you want to go on to your next read?
The next one was one that I started in May, and I then finished it in June. And it's a book that William has been hassling me to read for a long time. Gates of Athens by Conn Iggulden. Now, I love the book Gates of Fire by Stephen Pressfield, and these both are set in classical Greece, and they both tackle the Battle of Thermopylae. This one tackles the bottleneck of the Hot Gates. This one tackles the Battle of Marathon as well, which was, how many years before was it? About 10?
I have no idea.
5, 6, 8? Between 5 and 10 years.
Probably.
I think it was 10. I thought, how on earth can I love this as much as Gates of Fire? That book is a monumental historical fiction, one of the best out there, and Stephen Pressfield's style of writing is so different to Conn Iggulden's. And I think the last few books by Conn Iggulden that I've read, I haven't really gelled with. I loved him when I was a teenager, but yeah, the last few books just haven't been for me. But The Gates of Athens, from page 1, I was like, we're reading something different.
It is
we're
one of those
reading
rare reads, isn't it?
Iggulden at the top of his game, and everything just clicked. Everything went into place. It was like a beautifully knit phalanx. All of the shields overlapped onto the right wing. Is beautiful, stunning. It's a fantastic book. We follow several key characters in Athenian history, and I love seeing the story play out from their perspectives, and they are all so different to each other. And because they're historical figures, what I loved was getting to know these characters in Iggulden's own way, and you see their personalities brought to life. You have, Aristides the Just, and you have Themistocles, and you have Xanthopus, and you have Pericles.
Who was your favourite of the main three?
Well, I like
to follow, not as an individual. Like
I think Themistocles was the most fun, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's charismatic.
Exactly. He's got bags of charisma.
Well,
100%.
in the sequel, he is far more central.
Yes.
As
Well,
so,
yeah, good. And
have you read the sequel yet?
No, I will though. But seeing the battles of Marathon and Thermopylae were painted in a way by Themistocles. He was a fantastic politician, wasn't he? Like he really labelled Thermopylae as a victory, which was the Persians.
That takes a lot of...
Which is, that they lost. The Spartans lost. But it somehow, through history, has been turned through Themistocles and I guess through Herodotus, that it's been labelled as this huge victory because of the evacuation of Athens. It's just fantastic. But yeah, Gates of Athens, every single thing that you want to read in historical fiction is here. The history is, from my point of view, spot on. I love the immersion, the writing, the action is fantastic, and every single word it furthers the plot, which is the main thing. It's very effective. And
it's a fine line, isn't it? Because you don't want it to be rushed. But you need it to prepare it forward.
It just felt
it does have the slower moments, but during that it's building up the tension and...
It felt like the point of a dory, the bronze spear. It's fantastic. But yeah, go read Gates of Athens.
And next time, Ed is talking about another book that I've also absolutely adored.
Oh, me. Okay, the next one I read is Arthur by Giles Kristian. Giles Kristian is one of my favourite writers, and Arthur is, I believe, his best book of the Arthurian, Lancelotian, Camelotian trilogy.
The Arthurian Tales, in other words.
That's the one.
So yeah, they're all standalones, but they're companion tales.
Yeah.
So Lancelot is one. Then it goes on to Camelot, and then it goes on to Arthur. So each one can be read on their own, but they're enriched by reading the others.
Which cover, is your favourite, guys? Let us know in the comments.
What's yours, Ed?
I think Arthur, the bear, is great. I think the colour is wicked as well. But I think I prefer the colour of Lancelot. But the picture of Arthur is wicked.
I was going to say bear, wolf, but the bear, but with the Camelot colour. I love the Camelot colour.
You like the bronze.
Yeah.
Nice. But yeah, so I think Arthur is Giles Kristian's his best book in this trilogy. It is just incredible. The way that you get the character of Arthur through his POV is just something I did not expect at all, and it played out so well. You have a lot of Arthurian myth here, but stuff that he hasn't used in the first two books. You've got a far more intimate and kind of, zoomed in tale. And you see these characters in completely different shadows, completely different lights. And, Giles Kristian has a wonderful painting brush, and he has so many different colours to paint this landscape. And each one of those brushes makes you cry. I was weeping in this book, and it is so... I just find it crazy how Giles Kristian can evoke so much emotion from his writing style, and it's just something, I guess, it's something you can't learn. It's just something that is natural, that is within you. So Arthur is a fantastic historical fiction novel. It is set in Dark Ages Britain, and it is so different to any other historical fiction I've ever read.
I'd also say it's the most unique Arthurian legend book I've ever read as well, because it is so different in its approach, where there's like Bernard Cornwell's Wall of Chronicles, some of my favourite books of all time, but they do play a lot into the Arthurian legend in great ways.
Yeah.
Whereas this is distancing itself from that a lot, in that we've got two separate timelines, and a lot of it is things that you would never have seen in the Arthurian legend.
And you still have this like hope, tragedy
the themes,
Arthurian tales, but it just plays out so well, doesn't it? It's one of my favourite Giles books ever. Please go read it.
Wow. Yeah, definitely go read it, and we'll be talking about it a lot more on the channel over the coming weeks and months. Ed, do you want to go again? Again?
I think you should go again.
But we've already covered...
Okay, next one for me is another historical fiction.
This
time, Stormcrow by Ben Kane. And this is a Viking Age historical fiction. I've not read much as Viking stuff lately. For a while, actually, I don't think.
What was the last one? Do you remember?
It might be Theodore Brun's book.
Oh, okay, yeah. That was a few months ago, wasn't it?
A few months ago. But yeah, Stormcrow, Ben Kane. This is set in Ireland. And I wanted to read Ben Kane for a long time. And each time I go to read him, there's something else just pulls me in that direction.
I keep forgetting you never picked up one of
No,
his books before.
I want to read his Hannibal books. I want to read the Napoleon books. I want to read anything of his
Richard the
Roman
Lionheart
books.
trilogy is great.
Yeah, I would like to read them as well. But I decided to pick up Stormcrow for the my first Kane read, and it follows a coming of age story in Ireland, and this boy is descended from the Norse that have washed up in Ireland, and it's set in the 10th century, so it's the same kind of period as Shauna Lawless's trilogy, which is really, really cool. And that's historical fantasy. This is just pure historical fiction, and we follow a group of characters around this main character as he wants to be a warrior. He finds this sword on the beach, he gives his life to Odin, and then things start to happen. And that was the first chapter, and then I think after that first chapter, things for me kind of go downhill. It definitely, I just don't think I gelled with this book well at all. Unfortunately, I'm definitely going to read a lot more Ben Kane, but I felt like a lot of stuff was being shoehorned into this too. And it did the story a disservice. I think the setting was really unique and interesting. I love the Vikings in Ireland. That's such a a unique setting. We've had the British Isles, but Ireland is different. The action was cool. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how Ben Kane continues to write action, how he's written in his previous books. I feel like the characters were kind of all defined by perhaps modern day standards, and it didn't feel as immersive as I was hoping. But I'm definitely going to read some more Ben Kane in the future. It just wasn't my favourite read. But yeah, definitely give it a go. It might be up your street. It's worth it for the setting alone.
I'll definitely be trying it out because I've read, I think, 6 books by Ben Kane, and each one's been very enjoyable.
Nice.
So yeah, next up I have, my second book. My book reviews might be happy to hear that I read You Like It Darker by Stephen King. He had great things to say. I think You Like It Darker was actually his book of the month. And so, obviously, he can talk a lot more about how this relates to Stephen King's previous works. And if you enjoyed this, you might enjoy You Like It Darker in terms of the Stephen King catalogue, because he is a maestro of that. But I dove into this and I just thought it was consistently great. I think there's 11 stories, perhaps. Something like that, maybe 12 or 13. There's one I couldn't read because that detail is very important if there's 12 or 13. I'm joking. But
I was really just...
I'm sorry.
He threw me off there. He's read a lot, hasn't he? That bloke.
No, 13 short stories in here.
No, I know, but just looking at all the books.
Oh, right, yeah, his just crazy. There's a page here just showing everything he's written.
It's a bit much, really.
It is a bit much.
Greedy.
It is greedy, isn't it? He's got to share. But there's one short story I couldn't read because it spoiled Cujo. And so I haven't read Cujo, so I didn't read that.
Was it a short story about a dog?
I have no idea. It was called
Is he the
Rattlesnakes.
Saint Bernard?
It was called Rattlesnakes.
How did you know it was about Cujo?
Because I heard my book review say there's a spoiler in.
Ah,
So thank you, Mike, for that.
Nice.
There was one of the story that didn't quite click with me, but the rest were all just fascinating and engaging and hooked me within a few pages. Vivid characters, great plot, great events, and he's just such a master. It is just, his writing is effortless. I think I've read a lot of his early stuff now, and I love that. I really love that. But I think you can tell with his later things that I've read, such as Later and this, that there is an effortless quality to it, just because he's such a natural. All these characters spring to life. And the title is You Like It Darker. So he's giving us some dark stories, and he really, really delivers. Of course, with King, there's a lot of supernatural elements, but there's quite a few stories where there isn't any of that. And it is just dark human stuff. But I love the stories. There's one about kind of an older man
love dark human stuff.
I love dark human stuff, but I love the variety we get here. We've got a story about how did this man and his best friend suddenly both get incredibly famous in their 40s in completely different spheres.
And how did they?
What happened when they went into the woods?
Did they see a bear?
Well, I'm not going to
Was
say.
there a big surprise?
Well, I'm not really going to spoil it, am I? And then there's another one about a man trying to kind of have a bit more purpose, and his sister gives him a puppy to look after, and that's a great story as well.
It's like in Friends.
That was actually
Phoebe wants a child,
so they give her a dog to see if she can look after it. Yeah,
pug, I think.
Yeah. But that one was great because you just knew
Just Phoebe.
obviously something dark's going to happen.
Yeah.
What are you on about? So you know something dark's going to happen.
Yeah.
But you just have no idea what, and I was terrified.
It's like the Blair
Utterly
Witch
terrified for this
know
puppy.
Something bad's going.
Oh yeah, Ed watched the Blair Witch. I did as well, actually, but separately.
Yeah.
Watched the Blair Witch for the first time, and that was so good.
I don't know why people watch horror.
It was great though, wasn't it? You can
Yeah,
appreciate the
it was
quality.
quite good. But when you live in the country, you
Oh
just
yeah,
don't.
and we were, and I
I'm not
watched
looking
it,
outside ever again.
and I watched it a few days before we went camping together. So, but anyway, You Like It Darker was great, and it's just I need to read more King, but spoiling a little bit of my July reads, but or TBR. Instead of diving into another Stephen King book, I'm going to pick up a book by his son. I'm going to read Horns by Joe.
So you're like, I have to read more Stephen King, so I'm not going to read him, and I'm going to read his son instead.
Well,
have you seen the film Horns?
No, but Dada said that's. I think he said that's all right, but the book is incredible.
Yeah,
and
the
he
film
said
wasn't
that
great.
Horns feels like a Stephen King book.
Yeah.
And I've now read, I think 10 books by Stephen King. So I've covered a lot of the ones that really hook me straight away. You know, by the premises. Yeah. There's a few more I need to read, but also they're 1,200 pages.
I'd like to read 11, 22, 63 or something.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
11, 14, 19.
11, 22, 63. Yeah.
I'd like to read that, but it's just a big boy, isn't it?
And so's the stand. So's It.
The Outside.
Which I will get to, but I just needed.
What do people think of listening to Stephen King? Because obviously he has that kind of that workman prose, hasn't he? But I'd probably listen to him.
My single favourite author to listen to.
More than Giles.
No, I'm not saying forget the quality, but how easily they transcribe to
prose style
to audiobook. Nice. I listen to Misery.
They translate,
and they often, because it's Stephen King, have the highest quality.
Yeah.
Misery was terrifying. Please listen.
I will.
To it.
I might actually.
It was absolutely terrifying. Yeah. And I listened to what another read of mine of June is, but another King read. But I'll talk about that in a minute.
Cool. Next one for me was A Feast for Crows by George R. R. Martin.
Who's that by?
I'm starting to sound a little bit negative in this wrap up.
Ed,
I know.
I don't have time for this.
It's gone downhill from the halfway mark.
Well,
definitely.
you have 30 seconds.
Okay, A Feast for Crows. It was definitely not my favourite. It has the pace of an asthmatic snail.
You're doing Blackadder joke.
What?
Oh, what's an asthmatic ant?
I'm just being myself, Will. I can't believe you. Anytime I say any joke, you just pin me down to trying to steal
Sorry.
from Black
No,
Earth.
I thought it was a good thing.
And you've done that in front of all of our friends.
I'm sorry.
Online. Thanks for
sorry.
that. Anyway, A Feast for Crows is slow. Happy? Happy now? You kidding me? It's a slow book. Half the characters are chopped out of it because George R. R. Martin couldn't be bothered to write all of it to put it together, and then released it 6 or 5 years later. The next one.
Ooh, don't hold back, Ed.
Yeah. I think the other books have a lot of highs and lows. Let's compare The Song of Ice and Fire to having a bath. Okay, now a Game of Thrones, you get in, it's a warm bath, but then like you settle in. And then you've realised you've forgotten your shampoo, you've forgotten your body wash, you've forgotten your, anything else you take into the bath. And you have to keep jumping out. Oh, I forgot this. And then you get back in. And then A Clash of Kings, you run that bath perfectly. There's enough space, the bubbles are high, the candles are lit, and it's just soothing.
You have some nice baths.
It's a beautiful bath. The temperature is perfect. It doesn't get too hot. It's not too cold. It's just right, like Goldilocks. Okay? And then you have a Storm of Swords, and the bath. It's 1 minute it's boiling. You put a bit of cold water in, oh, it's too cold. You put a bit of hot water in, it's too hot. And you realise by the time you get to the end, it was quite an up and down bath.
Whoa!
And then you get to A Feast for Crows, and it was just cold. But you know what lies beneath when the when the plug is around her foot.
Yeah.
You are trapped in this bath.
You can't leave.
You can't get out because it's wrapped around your foot. The plug is. And A Feast for Crows, it's just too cold. There's no warmth. There's no bubbles. And
All right, Ed, you've been way longer than 30 seconds of negativity right now.
Sorry.
The longest.
But
Why are we in a bath?
still some cool stuff, but not great.
That's good though, Ed. I appreciated that.
I'm trying really
So,
hard.
did you enjoy Game of Thrones? Because it doesn't sound like you did.
No, I did. Lots of amazing bits, but then lots of it I just
Get out for
didn't
shampoo
care for.
doesn't sound nice.
No, exactly. And there were lots of bits I don't think I liked the writing style. Maybe the water wasn't quite right. Maybe it was yeah. But I think Clash of Kings is the best.
You can tell he's a teacher, can't you? You have to keep everything
because
engaging.
I waffle.
Anyway, let's hear you waffle to another book.
Oh
Next
no.
Oh
no.
He's gonna be negative again.
I'm really sorry. Do you know I'm not sorry. I'm really negative because I think a lot of people say that we're too positive about books.
Well, you took that lesson to heart.
Number one,
didn't you?
I love books. I always want to be positive.
Yeah.
But number two, I'm really good at picking books for myself that I know I'm going to enjoy. Apart from the last 3 this month.
Apart from June 2024.
Apart from June. But I mean, look at it. Look, you've got Arthur. You've got Gates of Athens. You've got A Time of Dread. You know, I think
basically
the next book for me is one I absolutely loved as well.
Okay.
So Babel.
Let's get to that.
Babel, a historical fantasy, inspired by 19th century, the British Empire. Well, inspired probably isn't the word, but this book
Set
it has a
in the
lot.
19th
It has a
century.
lot of promise, and I just feel like when I got to the end. I mean, I'm not going to talk about what it's about because everyone knows what it's about. It's one of the most popular books of the last 5 years, isn't it?
Obviously, spoilers.
Exactly, that's very true. But I think I just didn't like it. It wasn't for me, and I'm really sad to say that because I wanted to like it. I think R.F. Kuang, I'm a bit hit and miss with some of her books.
Mm-hmm.
I loved Yellowface. I liked some of the Poppy War. One of them I wasn't too keen on, and then Babel. Babel is not up my street. Unfortunately, I had a lot of promise and I'm really disheartened that I didn't enjoy it. But I think with a distinct lack of characterization, distinct lack of nuance, I think, if you're writing about the British Empire from this point of view, I think turning it into a lecture, that's the wrong way to go about it. You're not going to glorify it at all because that's definitely the wrong way to go about it. But I think writing it and the characters and the plot with a certain amount of nuance would be a good thing. A little bit of subtlety, that would have been great. But I feel like those words got lost in translation here, unfortunately. You liked Babel though, didn't you?
Yeah, I really liked Babel.
And I think by the end of it, it's not very enjoyable.
Get out.
What did you like about it?
I really liked her writing style. I really liked the setting, the world building. I liked the magic. I thought the ending was great. as well.
The magic isn't explained though at all. It's
No, but
silver is.
Sometimes you don't need it
silver
all
is
explained.
Magical. I know, but that's not a reason to read a book, in my opinion. No, I like the world building and the magic system,
Me?
but the magic is
You.
I'm just going to try to have a discourse about it. Okay.
You want a discourse?
Fine, that's fine.
We'll have a discourse.
Go then.
Next up, I have The Shining by Stephen King, which is, of course, one of his most popular books, possibly his most popular. And I need to watch the film. I have somehow avoided all spoilers of The Shining. I mean, I've seen a crazy picture of Jack Nicholson, so I know that character, he has a bit of a moment. That's all I knew going into The Shining. He has a bit of a moment. And I thought his name's probably Johnny.
Are you kidding me? He has a bit of a...
I thought his name's probably Johnny.
Well, because he shouts, "Where's Johnny?"
Yeah.
He's shouting, "Where's Johnny?"
Yeah.
And you think his name's Johnny.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which it is.
You should read it and
Which
watch
it
it.
is.
I haven't watched it. I read it.
But this was absolutely just great. As I said earlier, listen to it. Another one that Stephen King book narrated fantastically. And we mainly jump between 3 POVs. There's a few others as well. But a mother, father, and a son he's got a bit of a gift. He has an uncanny way of just knowing what's going on around him. Especially for his age of only being, I think,
Street
5 years
smarts.
old. More
That's
than that.
called being alert.
More than that.
Really?
More than that. But it has some, maybe you could call it a shining. Oh, that's maybe where the title comes from. But I loved it. I love the build-up. I love the tension. I love the setting. I love the character relationships and how Stephen King, he somehow in a lot of his books has hardly anything happen in the first half, but you feel the tension. You feel terrified that it's about to explode at any moment, and that's where he hooks you, keeps you there, keeps you listening, keeps you reading, and yeah, he just has you invested. And the same here. I think that for me, the climax lasted a little bit too long, so it did drop below perhaps some of my favourite Stephen King reads, but still, it was great. I would definitely read it again, and I definitely understand why it's so beloved, and I'd recommend it widely.
Very nice.
That's how to be positive, Ed.
Okay.
Next up is going to be Ed talking about a book that he loved.
So I loved it. I really loved that Jack Nicholson was in this book, and I really loved the shining aspect of it, and I just think the climax was just too good. So I loved it. Happy? Okay, Berserk, Deluxe Edition 5.
You're number 5. Wow.
Yeah, which is volumes 12, 13, 14, or 13, 14, 15. It's the end of the eclipse, and it is... Miura's mind is something. This is one of the most intense selection of volumes of Berserk that I've ever read, and in these pages are some of the most unforgettable moments of Berserk, and this needs serious trigger warnings. Like, this is a book that needs every single trigger warning out there. The stuff that's portrayed is incredibly intense, incredibly brutal and horrific, and some of just the most affecting stuff that I've read in anything and that I've watched or anything like that. So so be warned. I know Berserk has that name for it. When I first started reading it, I just thought it was like some, Guts is a badass and he just kills everything. But it quickly becomes some of the most, at times, sentimental
Is that how it begins?
Development. Yes, and then it is quickly transformed into just something completely different to anything you've ever read before. Now, there were some things in this that I believe probably were handled not in the best way, not tasteful, but you can kind of see why some things are portrayed like that. I don't want to go into it for spoilers, but yeah, I don't know. It just, some things to me felt a little bit distasteful. There are lots of parts of this that were absolutely brilliant as well. Berserk is a fantastic series for a reason. And I love the way that you come back to the Black Swordsman arc, which is the first volume. So once you read this, you start the next arc, which is the Conviction arc. And it kind of has it goes back to volume 1 where you see where the character is and you understand why that's going on, and I bet on a reread you know, you wouldn't have the same thoughts the first time round because you know shit goes down basically. But yeah, no, Berserk has become one of my favourite series for a reason. I think it's very nuanced. I think it's just written incredibly for the most part. There are still stuff I don't gel with. But there's some of the most remarkable moments of anything fantastical, any literature really, and I think the earlier volumes there are character moments that are unrivaled. So yeah, definitely pick up Berserk, give it a go, and see what all the fuss is about.
You're on volume 5.
Yeah,
I really need to catch up with you. And by that I mean
start.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, I thought you were on volume 2 or 3, and I was thinking start.
Oh, really?
You know, have a little chat about it.
Yeah, no,
in your mind.
Well, go for it. I'll always reread it. Definitely.
Perfect. Well, next up I have a book that is not or a novella that is not released yet, but will be perhaps when this video is out. Actually,
perhaps.
But that is Dreams of Sorrow by Shauna Lawless. You talked about her Ghoul song earlier, so sorry. That begins with the children of gods and fighting men, and it is a trilogy that is ending this year. But she's also done something quite bold, and I love it. And it's really paid off in my opinion. She's released 2 novellas this year that are prequels that you don't have to read.
Are her novellas released through a publisher, or is it self-published? I would be very interested to know.
I don't know. I know there aren't physical copies as of yet, but I believe there will be.
That suggests...
I'm not sure.
But, I mean, a publisher might just choose not to print it because not many pages.
I'm not sure.
So, that would be interesting though, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
because I know, obviously, we get a lot of novellas with self-published authors.
Yeah.
But it's hard, you know, it's different seeing Shauna Lawless publishing it because she's trad.
Yeah, but I think that... anyway, I don't know.
Yeah.
Be interesting to find out. But these are her Dreams of Fire and Dreams of Sorrow are 2 of the best novellas I've read.
Nice.
It hits that line where with a novella that's related to a series but you don't want it to be essential, such as Ryan Cahill's novellas with The Band and the Broken, you want a line where you're already hooked and invested through a world of characters or an idea or a part of the history that you already know a bit about, but you need it to stand on its own 2 feet as well. And so often in novellas, the new characters suffer because there's too much reliance on what you already know.
You're going to suffer.
But
you're going to be happy about it.
All right, Ron Weasley over there. But Dreams of Sorrow has the perfect amount, in my opinion, and so does the other novella, Dreams of Fire. Of the new characters were often my favourites of these novellas.
Is there going to be a third novella? It feels like there should be a third.
I'm not actually sure.
Dreams of Sorrow, Dreams of Fire. You need a third.
Dreams of Ice.
Dreams
of Love, although with how dark
Dreams
a lot
of
of these,
Joy.
I feel like that won't be the name of it. But I love how it has a much darker context to Ghoul Song, and these are just brilliant. If you haven't read the series yet, please dive into one of the novellas, and if you haven't started it already, what are you doing? We've got a video up on the channel talking about the children of gods and fighting men if you want to check that out. Historical fantasy at its best.
Yes.
That's me done, Ed.
Thank you for watching our video on what we read in the month of June. I'm sorry for ranting about baths. I hope you forgive me. But it was a great month for me. It was a really good month of quality for Will. And we are very much looking forward to the glorious month of July. I've got a good feeling about July. I think we're going to have some good reads there, Will. And upcoming videos for July will be obviously the July TBR and also our favourite books of the year so far. Parts 1 and Part 2. So keep your eyes peeled for both of those parts. Check out the Part 2 will be the top books of the year so far. And it's always fun making a list for the channel. I love lists.
It is.
And I love breaking the rules of the list and making a top 10, a top 13 or a top 14.
Any list to talk about your favourite books. What's not to like? It's
a joy. And so hopefully we'll catch you in those videos as well. But in the meantime, happy reading, truth and courage from the Brothers Gwynne.
The Brothers Gwynne.